All right, welcome back to Daybreak on this 26th day of April 2021. It is the day that, of course, the final week of April, but also the week that we're expecting that we should see some special sittings at the National Assembly. We'll be confirming whether that's the case with one Deputy Majority Whip here from the National Assembly. But let me just introduce the panelists. So we have one, yes. Let me begin by Dr. Chris Omala, the Member of Parliament for Kiminini constituency. Karibu sana to the show, and it's good to see you again.
Thank you.
One Mauka Maori, the Deputy Majority Whip at the National Assembly. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Irungu Kangata, should I say Senator of Moranga or former Majority Whip at the Senate? Or both?
Either.
So welcome back. It's been a long time. We haven't had you here on Daybreak, but it's good to see you. But also we'll be joined shortly by Anton Oloch, the Member of Parliament for Mathare constituency. He'll be joining us via way of Skype. As soon as that happens, we'll be in a position to bring him on board as we dive into the conversations of what's informing public discourse. And I want to begin by looking at the front page of the Daily Nation, that you'll see the story I've been telling you about of India's situation, where they've been reporting over 300,000 new infections over the past, is it 2 or 3 days? And as of now, as of yesterday actually, they reported 2,622 fatalities. If you compare that to the fatality in Kenya, the cumulative one is 2,622. So the fatalities that we've reported over the past more than 1 year compares to India in a single day. But of course, you would say that it's a big country with hundreds of millions of people in population. But Dr. Chris Omala, of course, when such happens in India, which is one of the main sources of pharmaceutical products, it's of concern. You remember that earlier in the year, there was that cut down on the exports to the rest of the country when it comes to whether it's COVID jabs or other medications. What lessons are we learning from a small country in this African region and looking at these giants that have had quite a hit when it comes to COVID-19, yet they have the power and muscle to produce pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Well, first and foremost, I want to say that Kenya is at the mercy of God. If you see countries like India, India is actually a powerhouse in terms of pharmaceutical manufacturing. In fact, the AstraZeneca vaccine that Kenya has been using is being manufactured from India. And initially, before this, the Prime Minister for India, I think they gave some donations to Kenya, about, I remember very well, 100,000 doses or so. Little did he know that it's coming to strike. So to the fellow Kenyans, this corona pandemic, it is something serious. Kenya is a small country. We don't have capacity if we compare with India. India with their population, I think India by now should be number 2, if not number 1 population in terms of population in the world. Kenya, we should be around maybe a 6th, almost a 6th. And looking at the prevalence levels, the way India is moving, it can't be able to cope. We've seen many Kenyans traveling from here to go to India for medication, medical tourism. So a powerhouse in terms of medical health care is being attacked like this. This is to tell Kenya that we should not take this for granted. Particularly this third wave. It is very, 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 very deadly. Particularly those people with the underlying conditions. If you get it, you can barely survive within 2 weeks. So this is something that we call upon our colleagues, that we follow the Ministry of Health protocols in terms of sanitizing, putting on masks, social distance. And those of us who have gone for the vaccine, and if the vaccine is available, we are requesting our colleagues, the healthcare workers, who are the first line in terms of management of this COVID, the police, the teachers, to go quickly and take that vaccine, and request the government, because within the time frame of 2 weeks, we are supposed to be going for the second dose. But it goes without saying that we might not get the AstraZeneca variety. So we've had issues of maybe the Pfizer one or the Johnson & Johnson. So the government should move with speed so that when time for the second dose comes, at least the stocks must be available in the country.
Well, they have revised that timeline, because initially it was between 8 and 12 weeks, but now they have officially communicated that we should target to have the second dose by the 12th week. We don't know whether that will succeed, but as you say, it's call on the government to ensure that happens. I'm just looking at some of the statistics, and you'll see that, yes, India has 1.29, almost 1.3 billion people, that is the size of their population, and 1.3% of them have had COVID because their cases are over 17 million infections. In Kenya, we have a population of 47.5 or thereabout based on the census of 2019, and 0.3% is our rate of infection vis-a-vis the total population. But Senator Kangata, all this will not make sense until it touches us on how we are protecting ourselves. I was looking at some statistics from the Ministry of Health and showed that despite us locking down the disease-infected zone, there are several counties outside this zone that are continuing with the rate of infections. What do you make of the state of our containment, but also on how we're able to detect the testing that is happening in the counties, if you can be specific to Murang'a?
Personally, I'm very doubtful as to the data that is coming from counties. I suspect more people have COVID-19 in various counties, including Murang'a County. I suspect more people are dying out of this disease in various counties. I suspect there is a lot of underreporting. I say so based on my personal observations. You go to a place like Murang'a, you see so many people are now dying, people that you know at a personal level, out of COVID-19. Maybe I can comment a little bit on India. India was somehow basically managing the pandemic until the other day when they started allowing religious festivities, which made people now to congregate in huge numbers. There is every likelihood there's a connection between this wave and those huge congregation. I think Kenya should be fearful that we may also enter into a period of fourth wave. We would be urging the government to wrap up efforts to contain COVID-19, in particular, pumping more money into vaccination programs, pumping more monies in what we call mass testing. In fact, that's the reason why I strongly believe the money that we are about to expend on BBI, almost 15 billion to conduct a referendum, should be taken back and reallocated to the fight against COVID-19, so that we don't have a situation where we have so many people who have not been vaccinated. Personally, I've gone to court in Murang'a Law Court seeking an order against the Ministry of Health and the government to compel them to give farmers a priority when it comes to matters of vaccination. I have seen the government vaccinating sports people who tend to be young.
Why farmers?
One, you know, agriculture is so critical in this country. And when we have a situation where our farmers are unable to be productive because of COVID-19, it will impact on the entire society. Number two, of course, I represent Murang'a, where 80% of economic activities is farming, and therefore have to push the interests of the farmers. And thirdly, and most importantly, the median age of a farmer in Murang'a County is about 60 years. 55 to 60, which happens to be the vulnerable age group on matters COVID. So I think I hope the court will determine and give me those orders.
You know, I'm just wondering, okay, it's okay if it's a matter before court, but I'm just wondering, because currently the priority list, if I don't miss anything, is of the frontline workers in the health sector, security, religious, the teachers themselves, and over 58. And if majority of your farmers are above the age of 50, then they would appear to be covered. But also I'm wondering what makes them more exposed than the other frontline workers at a time that you're dealing with the shortages in vaccine?
First, I strongly believe Kenya has money to vaccine every citizen. We have huge billions of shillings that we are expending on matters which, in my own view, should not supersede the importance of protecting Kenyans from COVID-19. I've given you an example of BBI money. That money should be taken and given to our Ministry of Health to purchase enough vaccines. Number two, it is true, whereas farmers tend to be a little bit old, we still have a huge cohort of farmers who are still young, let's say between 40 and 55, and therefore they do not fall under that priority list. But taking into account that if agriculture for any reason was to collapse, and I can tell you it is there's that potentiality of collapse of agriculture sector, this country would grind to a halt. It offers employment. It is the sector that produces food. And Murang'a, you know, we are the leading producers of avocado. We are the leading producers of small-scale tea.
That's what I'm asking. What makes them more exposed than anyone else?
The maize, which is more stable.
Yeah, I'm saying by virtue of, for me, the issue is not about exposure.
Okay.
It is the service that you offer to the country.
Okay, all right. Yeah. And Honorable Mauka Maure, so as we get into this, of course, this conversation has been going on. We just saw a very detailed account of your governor, Governor Kiraitu Murungi, of his battle with COVID. But we've been struggling with the response. You hear him say that you're not prioritizing the procurement of vaccines based on the money allocated, despite the Minister of Health saying that they're looking out for many other vaccines. Now, where do we go from here? Because India at one point in time appeared stable. So did the US, so did Brazil, and so many other countries. But there appears to, every time there's a different wave, it hits harder, even those countries that may have thought they were stable.
Yes. No, I first of all want to begin by just saying that we thank God that our governor, Imeru governor, has done the quick recovery, and eloquently talked about it. And the most important part to talk about what we can learn from the Indian crisis is that there is no country which cannot be overrun by this pandemic. And the only issue we need to emphasize on is the readiness. We use the alarm that we have gotten from the Indian crisis as a way of us getting ready. Because you notice what is happening in India, unlike most of the European crises that happened in Spain and Italy, it was an issue of ventilators, which is a bit like 100 times more costly than a simple oxygen cylinder. And if you have a country which has the manufacturing capacity like India, being overrun by a simple gadget like oxygen cylinder, you really have to be worried. They were saying that in the data, New Delhi alone got over the weekend, or yesterday alone, had 24,000 new cases. So when you say that, Kenya, the highest or the biggest number of people we have had one day is maybe 700.
No, we have had 2008 infections.
No, I'm saying in one day.
Yes, 2008 infections.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Sometimes in March.
So you are talking of 10 times that in a single city. Now, what we need to worry about is anything like that happening here, it will easily
Catastrophic.
overrun our health infrastructure. They will cave in within the first 1 week. So this is what we need to be worried about as a country, use the alarm, and start getting ready, because that one can happen. And even when we say we have a partial lockdown of the 5 counties and the rest of the country, that lockdown, unless it is complete, that's when it can actually make sense or make an impact. Because even when you are locked, there is quite a lot of interaction, either within the 5 counties or even outside the counties. And the interaction, you can learn the example of India also. The religious festivities that happened just 2 weeks ago, and also the political rallies that were happening, whereby about quite a number of states were having rallies and huge crowds of unmasked crowds. This kind of behavior, it needs to be controlled and contained, even as we are doing the partial lockdown. Because if you go outside these counties, if you go to even places of worship, or even in burials, the enforcement is not as what is being pronounced as the enforcement. Because if you don't enforce, these are the simple trigger points that is going to cause a crisis for us.
Are you suggesting that, excuse me, the country should be locked down in totality?
No, the problem with us, if you do complete lockdown, it will involve feeding people. And that one we may not have the capacity. We are saying that the enforcement of that measure of distancing, if you go to our local markets outside of the 5 counties, you'll meet people crowding as usual, and nobody is masked.
Is it practical?
No, to enforce the masking is practical. Because last year, in the first 2-3 months, actually everybody obeyed the distancing and the masking. But thereafter, nobody cares.
What do we do with this enforcement?
I hold a contrary view with all due respect. I strongly believe the only way out to counter this problem is by conducting mass vaccination. Currently, I think we are aware that Israel has told people now to drop mask because they have vaccinated almost 60% of the total population of Israel. So meaning, look at the cost-benefit analysis. How much money are we expending by purchasing vaccines, which can make us, let's say, for instance, vaccinate about 20 million Kenyans, vis-a-vis the loss we would incur, or we are currently incurring, by, for instance, closing down 5 counties, coming up with these curfews, closing down businesses, whether churches, whether entertainment industry. We are losing billions. So for me, I think the best case scenario would be, instead of losing these billions, look for money, about 20 billion, which I know is possible for them to get. You just do a reallocation. You do a supplementary budget. Once you get those 20 billions, go purchase vaccines. Come and do max vaccination programs. Then reopen. Because if you don't do that, the losses that we are currently incurring will not compensate for any sort of any other possible intervention.
Okay, and finally, Dr. Chris Omalwa, of course, the Ministry of Health has said that there are those challenges of accessing these vaccines, but what is stopping you at the National Assembly from enacting a supplementary budget that would allocate finances for procurement of vaccines so that the ministry has the money, they just need to look for where it is?
First and foremost, we need to understand the economic problem. We have a lot of needs and wants, but we don't have enough budget. And I do agree with, to an extent, of what Honorable Senator has said. I think the best thing will be massive vaccinations. But the challenge is even the availability of that vaccine. It's also challenging. Maybe the Minister of Health should have gone further in some strategic partnerships with some of these producers of these vaccines so that there's that technology transfer. You remember sometimes last week, Rwanda, the president of Rwanda had some, I think, some discussions with the manufacturers of Johnson & Johnson. Maybe the government of Kenya should go further and have some partnerships with these manufacturers of, let's say, whether the Pfizer vaccine, the AstraZeneca, or Johnson & Johnson. Because I know when you look at the pharmaceutical setup in this country is a bit more advanced than Rwanda. If Rwanda can do it, Kenya will a step ahead. We already have some local manufacturing, pharmaceutical manufacturing companies that are already manufacturing vaccines. So really, I think the best way forward, because even if there's a supplementary budget to procure these vaccines, the availability is a challenge. India was the main source, but because they are now overwhelmed, they gave a directive that they are no longer going to export any vaccine. Priority is going to be their locals. So if that is closed, even when you go to Europe, when you go to America, this availability is not guaranteed. So maybe as we do a supplementary budget for that matter, for purposes of vaccination, plan B, the government can also go into partnership with the patent providers, these people who manufacture these drugs, so that there's that technology transfer. So we think of an option of having a local manufacturing plant that can be specifically for purposes of manufacturing that particular vaccine, so that to ease the accessibility of that vaccine.
Of course, a very trying moment for different countries across the world at a time that it's not yet known whether the COVID vaccines are effective, even when the variants keep mutating. But it's a conversation we'll continue to watch. But for you at home or wherever you may be, it is you to do your part. I know, Senator Kangati, you've had an encounter with COVID. Maybe someday you'll be in a position to share about it. But
can I comment one final point?
If you're talking about your encounter, yes.
No, just a little bit.
Okay.
Just to state that, I also believe that the Ministry of Health is responsible for some of these problems we are having.
How so?
The day they decided to ban private vaccine, I think they did this country some injustice. Because you see what happens, everyone is now crowding and fighting for the public vaccine. But I know there are many Kenyans who can afford a private vaccine. To take, for instance, members of parliament and senators have been vaccinated, majority of them. Every member of parliament can afford 10, 20,000 to purchase a private vaccine. So instead of...
But they said it was for the sake of public safety.
Surely, look at it here. That vaccine has been certified by Kenyan government. Of course, this is what is called the Point Source Board. They had certified it. In fact, they were saying that vaccine has a 92% efficacy rate. So as long as it has been certified by the relevant authorities in Kenya, allow private vaccine. Okay. My friend here has been vaccinated. He can afford 20 or even 30,000 to get a private vaccine. That vaccine should be given to the poor person. Should be given to the poor farmer out there.
I think my friend has done very good political science. And you know, in the class of political science 101, there's nothing, it's called demagoguery. You know what people want to hear, then you go there. The story about Sputnik, WHO has been asking for data of that vaccine so they can approve it or just see what is there. Russians have never given it. If it was approved by WHO, surely nobody would be able to say they cannot control it or cannot contain it. The fact that it was used in Kenya for a moment, I can tell you it was just sneaked in. And you know the behavior of our Kenyan society. And my brother from Murang'a knows that. Kenya, you can get anything around. But by the time people realize that there is a danger of safety, because like AstraZeneca has a lot of data, even including the research. When it was being done, actually it was done in Kilifi and our Kemri. So there is a lot of trail of the data of efficacy and the usage and the safety of AstraZeneca. But in Sputnik, nobody knows. We hear it's a very good vaccine, but that's where the story begins and it ends.
But why did the Poisons Board
all right,
give it
Senator
an
Kangata and
no, arrest. You should arrest those officials.
Okay, Senator Kangata and Honorable Maure, thank you so much for that. But I want us to make progress with the conversation that concluded last week. That was the search for a new Chief Justice. I just want you to listen to what some of the candidates had to say about this bugging question, about the question of 41, or is it 40 judges now?
A government has 3 legs like an African traditional stool. So those legs are the same. And if one is short, then you can't comfortably sit on that stool.
The judiciary is for the people. So in my approach, short-term, diplomacy. Long-term, engage other people who are likely to support the judiciary should it ever come under siege in the future, in terms of funding, in terms of disobedience of court orders.
Sometimes I feel like joking. If we have a lady CJ, like for me, I think I just pick a phone call and call Mama Margaret, kindly call me for a cup of tea and get me to know the moods of Mzee. Can he get to hear us? And then I come and talk to my members of the commission, we move and go and meet Mzee for purposes of having this. That's a joke, by the way, my lord. That is how I'm saying it.
Okay, she says it's a joke, but that's how she's saying it. Senator Kangata, because you've not had an opportunity to comment about this, what do you make of those interviews, and do you think there's actually a solution? There will be a solution to the 40 judges appointment deadlock with the president?
First, on the issue as to what I make out of those interviews is that personally I would want a Chief Justice who is going to ensure some of the positives that we saw during Maraga's tenure have been protected and embedded. In particular, independence of judiciary is very important. Article 172 of the Constitution establishes that independence, and therefore we need a strong, ethical Chief Justice who can ensure the independence of judiciary. And number 2, and most importantly, there were some technological innovations that were introduced by judiciary, including, for instance, these days, if you have a criminal case, you don't have to go physically before a magistrate. You do virtual hearings. That's very positive. So if we get a Chief Justice who can build on those successes of ensuring technology continues becoming a major feature of judiciary, that again will be very important for me as a practicing lawyer. Now, going back to the other issue was on?
For the appointment of 40 judges.
Pardon? Oh, the 40 judges, yeah, oh, sorry. On that issue, I strongly believe that the president needs to adhere to the court orders that have been issued. They have not been lifted. Failure to adhere to those court orders, in my view, is a breach of the Constitution, because we do not want us to go back to the Kanu days where judiciary was an extension of the executive. And currently we have a backlog of cases in the Court of Appeal, in the High Court. And without those 40 judges, we can't proceed, we can't move on. Of course, there were allegations that some of those judges had integrity issues. But of course, the best way to deal with that is to lodge a formal complaint with Judicial Service Commission. They conduct an inquiry. If they think there are grounds, they recommend to the president for formation of a commission or a tribunal to follow up those allegations. But currently, those allegations, they remain unsubstantiated, and therefore, I think, in my view, the president needs to adhere to the court orders that are still.
But what can a new CJ do? Because you hear Aliciano saying that she would desire to check on the mood of the president and facilitate a meeting with the president. What do you think the new CJ can do?
Of course, there's no doubt that a new CJ can explore possibilities of amicable settlement of that issue. I also agree to a certain extent that maybe Maraga should have been a little bit more, how do I put it, a person who can use diplomatic and political skills. You know how we politicians at times when we come into a deadlock, we use negotiation skills. So, and therefore, there's no doubt that a new CJS can consider using those skills, soft skills, to try to persuade the executive. Be that as it may, I still believe that the president or the executive is violating the Constitution for failing to adhere to those court orders. I'm not aware of a stay, staying those orders, and therefore Parliament, because it's also the entity that oversees other branches of government, needs to take up that matter and see how it can compel the executive to adhere to those valid court orders that exist as we speak.
And Dr. Chris Omalwa, you've been lucky to comment about this quite effectively in previous shows, but I just want to ask you now, because I remember the first time we discussed this, you raised several questions about the composition of the JSC, but also the persons that have been shortlisted. But now, Said Chitembo, who is a judge, Patricia Mbote, Professor of Law, Martha Koome, Court of Appeal judge, D.K. Marete, a High Court judge, then Philip, I think D.K. Marete is from the Employment and Labor Relations Court, if I'm not mistaken. Philip Murgo is a senior counsel. Ndumanderi, judge of the Employment and Labor Relations. Fred Ngatia, senior counsel. William Ouko from the Court of Appeal. And Professor Dr. Moni Wekesa. And then Aliciano, a lawyer. Out of that list of 10, who do you think it shall be? Or who are your best 3 candidates?
Because the interviews have been done, and I followed the interviews carefully. And that's why I said last time that JSC should not have wasted time by shortlisting the 10. They should have shortlisted the 3.
Which are?
And in my observation, the 3 here are 1, William Ouko, 2.
In any particular order?
Don't bother about the order. There's no order. I'm just shortlisting 3.
Okay.
So that if there was another interview, let them shortlist the 3 and give us the CJ.
Okay, William Ouko.
So William Ouko, Senior Counsel Ngatia, and Martha Koome.
Okay.
Those were the 3. They should not have wasted the 10.
What are your reasons?
So those 3, you know, and when you come up with a CJ, let me tell you that CJ is somebody very critical You know, we are politicians, and it's going to sit in the Supreme Court. And Supreme Court being a presidential petition court, you can't avoid politics. First, we must ensure that the composition of that court reflects the face of Kenya. To me, that one is very, very critical. And some people who came for that interview, they were not worth it. If you look at the way they were answering the questions, some of them had not prepared, despite the fact that they came later. Because if you are serious for an interview, when they're interviewing the first ones, at least there's something called learning curve. You can be able to anticipate the kind of questions that are coming so that you prepare. Some came afterwards, but when they were answering, you were shocked where they were coming from and why were they even shortlisted in the first place. So the JSC should have shortlisted those 3.
Okay.
And the interview will have picked 1. So I've given the 3 without any order. And I have no doubt that the Chief Justice is likely to come from the 3.
So from your interviews, of the 3, who inspired you most?
The 3 inspired me most.
Okay.
The 3 inspired me most. And I enjoyed the way they answered questions.
Okay.
Very articulate, and I enjoyed. But now, as they come up with a Chief Justice, there are other things you must look at. Not only that performance, the diplomatic skills. You know, CJ, you are looking at somebody who will ensure there's independence of the judiciary. 2, he's going to provide overall leadership of the JSC. And 3, someone with good negotiation diplomacy. Because as an arm of government, you are independent, yes, but you must be interdependent.
Okay.
So really, like the stalemate we're having of the 40 judges,
yes.
We need somebody with good negotiation skills that can be able to know how to talk to the executive, the legislature, so that we don't have this stalemate as we move forward.
Yet there are those who say that you cannot be negotiating about the following of court orders. But Honorable Mokamore, do you agree with his short list of 3?
I want to agree totally with what he has put forward. I only want to state that it is out of that team of 10, he is able to pick 3. So the process has been elaborate and worth it. That is why he is able to pick 3, and in the court of the public opinion, actually that is what is everywhere. Now,
so for you, out of the 3, who is your most likely CJ based on the performance before the interviews?
I think it would be also inappropriate to pick on 1.
It's not inappropriate to make your own reason.
No, in the sense, no, there are so many reasons why I may not wish to get into that. One being that when you have the 3, they really represent the best of the country, or best that there is in that team fit for the judiciary. So I wouldn't mind either of the 3 being the Chief Justice. Second, the issue of the 41 judges has been with us for long. And if people are able to understand the judiciary, there is the legislature, and then there is the executive. Now, all those 3 arms of government have to work together for us to have a moving or a decent society. When the list of the 41 judges got through, there was a serious loophole in quite a number of them as per what the response came from the president, because he does not have the power to pick directly from the judges. So the vetting capacity from the office of the president may not have a chance, because even if he vets and says 10 of them are right, the others are not. So the question is, what is the criteria? Now, instead of that one, the stalemate that has happened over the time has actually been on that of the story of the integrity issues among quite a number of them.
Maybe a point of order, that note, if you don't mind.
Okay, go ahead.
When you talk about issues of integrity, I think it's at the wrong timing. JSC, before they shortlist any person or interviews, they write to the respective bodies. And in this case, when you talk of matters of integrity, EACC gave a report. So we can't come and get an output and start raising the issues of integrity, even as parliamentarians. No. And when we vet even other people, we request for a report from the EACC, which is mandated on matters of integrity, if there is any. We also have the DCI. So my assumption is JSC must have been given the reports on matters of integrity. So where it has reached, I think the president should appoint. He has no basis to say
Okay.
that the issue. Let me
no,
finish.
that's
Let
not
me
the point
finish.
of order.
We will
It
come
was
to
a point
that.
of
Now
order.
that I had mentioned, let me
But it was
just
a point of
let me
order.
just conclude. Let me conclude.
I think
if
I
you
get
don't
what
mind.
you're saying.
Yeah. So this
but-
matter had already been raised. So when it comes to the output, let these be appointed. There are channels. Somebody can petition Parliament, as provided for in the Constitution, to remove that particular judge
And I
if there are
think
any cases of
All right,
integrity.
Dr. Chris,
But not
I
at this
think
moment,
that's what
please.
Senator Kangato was alluding to. But is his assumption right that JSC had received
Yes.
these reports and made their determination with knowledge of that information about integrity?
What I am putting to him and to the rest of those who would wish to know, this country, if you go today, there are people who have had criminal issues, even running from prisons, having been sentenced, they're in prison, they run out, but they will go and you find them with a certificate of good conduct. You will find them with the tax returns of businesses that are very much underworld businesses, and they still go and run for public office.
Are you saying that happened amongst some
Yes.
of the
Yeah.
nominees?
I'm trying to tell you, we are in Kenya. This is a serious possibility about several of those judges who have integrity issues, who should not be in
Can
that
we have
list,
full
or who should
disclosure?
be
Who
sworn
are
in
these
as
judges?
judges.
So Honorable Maure, because
With
you're
evidence.
close, you're close to the presidency because of your position as deputy majority whip, so you might know. But is there such information that specific
Yeah.
judges had those questions and that information was tabled before JSC as they made their determination?
I'm telling you, the problem of JSC has been the hostility of the president of that team, or the chair, whereby the hostility of trying to address the president through the press. If he would seek the list.
That came way later.
No,
that
no,
came
no.
in June 2020.
I'm trying to tell
Just
you.
a moment, for the sake of facts. These judges were recommended for appointment in July 2019. The
Yeah.
CJ made that statement before at the steps of the Supreme Court on, I don't remember the particular date, but it was in June 2020, almost a year later.
The question is, where have you been getting this story of the 41 judges? It is actually through the media. If you have a proper channel between the Chief Justice and the presidency, it's not supposed to be a personal relationship. It's just decorum. You just call and ask. The head of public service or the attorney general, between the two of them and the president, ask, what is going on? I need to answer these questions. I can assure you, between this morning and the evening, you don't get answers.
Okay.
But you, and this is temerity of going to the steps of the Supreme Court and address a press conference and lament about how you are being mishandled. You should not complain about being mishandled when you are the Chief Justice.
Okay.
Nobody has capacity to mishandle you.
All right, and Senator Kangato, I want you to have the final word here. I don't know whether you agree with the short list of Martha Koome, William Oko, and Fred Ngatia, but as you do so, apparently the leadership of the judiciary comprises of the following who are female judges. Acting CJ, or of course the DCJ, is a lady. The Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, a lady, Anna Madi. The Acting President of the Court of Appeal is a lady. Principal Judge of the High Court is a lady. Employment Labor Relations Court, the principal is a lady. The Registrar of the Supreme Court is a lady. Registrar of the High Court, a lady. Registrar of the Environment and Land Court is a lady. The Registrar of Tribunals, a lady. And two directors in finance and HR and administration are also ladies. Is it possible to have a lady CJ this time round, looking at the structure of the leadership of the judiciary at the moment?
Of course, there is no doubt about it. Yes, it is possible. I am not so sure what angle they look at when they are looking at things we call a gender parity. Do they look from a horizontal point of view or from a vertical point of view? Is it ensuring there is gender parity when you're looking at the CJ vis-a-vis the deputy CJ, vis-a-vis the other Supreme Court judges? Or are you looking from a vertical point of view that who is the head of the Court of Appeal, who is the Chief Justice? I think it is a moot point that needs to be discussed. The only thing I would want is to respond to some of the issues that have been raised by my colleague here. My brother, Mheshimiwa Maore, seems to indict the government that he is serving. He seems to affirm the government is abetting corruption. He seems to say that fake documents are being presented before Judicial Service Commission. And to me, that shows then this government is not doing a good job. If such kind of a statement can be made by the Deputy Chief Whip of the National Assembly, that there are fake documents in this country, that drugs that have been brought to this country have been brought in an irregular manner, that the certification that was given to the vaccine by Poisson's board was done in an irregular manner, then this government is not working.
A government that you
Okay.
He or she is having, it is
Like,
not
he's a
me.
senator,
It
he's a
him
public
who is
officer
saying.
as well.
It is not me saying that. It is him saying that fake documents are being presented before the Judicial Service Commission.
Okay.
Now-
You'd actually know more probably because you are Senate Majority Whip. He's just Deputy Majority Whip at the National Assembly.
Okay,
But-
as to the issue of the short list,
Uh,
I don't want to comment for reasons that
Maybe you
I
never
may
watched.
find myself before either of them.
okay.
Save that
Yes.
one of the person he has mentioned, and I will not
Disclose.
disclose. When I was a young person, he did a very bad thing against students of the University of Nairobi, including myself. You know what happened in the year 2000? I was a student leader, vice chairman of SONU. You were suspended. And then we went to court. We obtained some court orders against the Moi government then. Then there was a fight against the interpretation of that court order. So it was taken before a registrar to interpret the effect of that order of stay. That registrar construed against us, and as a result of that, we remained at home. Of course, it was very unfair because the effect of a stay order was we should
That's
return back.
conflict of interest.
So that
to court.
registrar was.
I did not.
Just a moment,
I have
Senator.
always wanted to raise that issue. whenever-
So the question I'm asking, one of the
one of the applicants to
the,
this process, one of the people who are able
is one
to
of the
become.
three.
No, I won't mention so that
No. You know,
one
it's,
of the applicants, one of
I
the
think we can obviously.
applicants who have applied
All
to
right,
become the
Senator.
Conflict
Chief
of
Justice.
interest.
All right,
Yes,
Senator.
you are right. In fact, that's the reason I have
Conflict of
said.
interest.
You are right.
Comment.
That is the reason
Yeah.
why I have said I will not.
And it's within your right.
but the point is, personally, I would prefer a person who is outside judiciary. It makes all the sense.
Okay, all right. Senator Kangata, Dr. Chris Omalawa and Honorable Mokomore here for that. We take a short break. When we return, we'll be talking about the matters politics. We don't know whether there will be a special sitting. Will there be? Yes or no? Honorable More?
No, as of now, there isn't.
Okay, all right. We'll talk about that. And of course,
In any case, we only have one
no,
week.
just a moment. I mean, it was a question to Mokomore. We'll talk about the errors that have been identified in the bill from the BBI process of the Constitution Amendment Bill 2020 and what impact that will have on consideration